Hey everyone, Sycra here, and in this lesson I'm going to be talking about how to draw kids and teenagers and their proportions. So to begin with though, I'm going to start with an adult, and for the purpose of this lesson, I'm going to go with an adult male, and I'm assuming you are already familiar with the adult male proportions. If you're not, go check out this video on adult male proportions. I've made one on adult female proportions as well, so you can go check those out. So we're going to start with the adult male, and that is an 8 head proportion, which is, it's pretty idealized rather, but it's easy to break down. So I'm going to start with that. So I'm going to start, and you can follow along with the top and then the bottom. So this is going to be where our person is going to fit inside. And then all I have to do is go halfway and divide it in half, and then divide it into quarters. And then divide it into eighths. So now I'm going to label these divisions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to do the adult male, so that's going to be 19 plus. And then we'll do 15 to 18. And again, these are just rough estimates. It's not that, well, I'm doing a 15-year-old, they have to meet these proportions. No, they may not. And then we'll do 10 to 14. But again, it's not about, definitely meeting these. It's just, this is a starting point. Okay, and 5 to 9, and 2 to 4, and 0 to 1. All right, so just gonna put some verticals in there as well. Oops. And let's start then with the head of the first one. So 19 and older adult male, we're going to make him 8 heads tall. And for the width, it's going to be roughly 2.5 to 3 heads. Let's make it 3 heads wide. So it's going to be pretty masculine. And I'm going to go divide this into 3, the second head segment, and then this is where the shoulder is going to be. So this is roughly how big the neck is, and then we'll flesh it out further later on. But this is the width. And as we get to the younger and younger ages, what's going to happen is this distance is going to shrink, and this distance is going to shrink. Okay, so now I have that head, and from the other tutorial, you know that the crotch is at 4 heads down, or another way of thinking of it is it's just halfway from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. And so now what I can do is create a box area for the torso and bring down some arms and the hands, and about halfway 5 heads down, or 4.5 heads down, that's where the hands end. Or another way of thinking of it is mid-thigh. Just above 6 heads down is the knees, And another way of thinking of it is you could just draw a straight line for the leg and then find the halfway point. That's where the knees go. And with the arms, same thing, you know, get the hands, but then just find halfway point of the arms, and that's going to be the elbow. And in this proportion, it's going to land 3 heads down, and that's also the navel. So this is the rough proportion of the adult male. And now let's go to the teenager. So if this one is 8 heads, the teen is going to be 7, or not teen, but 15 to 18. It's going to be about 7.5. So we can't just conveniently stick it one head here or one head here. What we're going to have to do is divide this top head in half and this second head in half, and then add the circle there. And I can actually go ahead and put in the other heads. So from this point, it's pretty easy. You just can go, okay, so that's 7.5. This one's going to be 7, 6, 5, and 4. So 6, 5, oops, 5, and 4. And again, keeping this very rough. Now, in this chart, all the heads are the same size, but that's not exactly to scale, because as you get older, your head does get bigger. But this will work for proportions, so it's not going to be a scale image where you can say how big is a baby, and then look at this one and then compare it to that and say, okay, that's the size difference. No, because this is just based on heads and proportions. It's not based, we're not dealing with, what did I say, the scale. Okay, so now we have the heads in there. And as I said, for each one, the neck's going to get a bit shorter and it's going to get a bit less wide. And it's okay really to just sort of guess. You don't have to rely on, you know, counting everything, because that's not what you're going to be doing necessarily when you're drawing anyway. You're going to be looking at it and, you know, roughly getting in the information. So something else you can think of instead of just thinking of, you know, how many heads, is just what's in the middle. So from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, what's in the middle. And for the 8 head guy, it's the crotch is in the middle. For the 7 head guy, 7.5 head, the crotch, it's about the crotch as well. So go from here to here and then find the middle. Think, okay, it's around there. Do the same thing going down. What's the middle for the 10 to 14-year-old? Again, it's going to be about the crotch. So what I'm doing is I go from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet, and I move up and down until I sort of feel where the midpoint is, and I put that in. And I've covered this in a previous tutorial. It's on measuring, something like that, measuring angles or something, and yeah. So there's that. Okay, and then for this one, middle is gonna be just above the crotch, so let's find that. Maybe about here. And for this one, it's gonna be in between the crotch and the belly button is the middle. And here it's going to be just the belly button's the middle. So just looking at this, if you know that, okay, this is the navel and it's the middle, then actually that's not the middle, that's the middle. Then you can kind of guess, okay, well then this is going to be the body, and then that's going to be pretty small legs. So really what happens, what's one of the biggest differences is the width this way and that way, you know, from shoulder to shoulder. the amount of neck that shows, but also the size of the legs in proportion to the torso. When you're a baby, you have a much bigger torso compared to your legs, or another way to think about it is much smaller legs compared to your torso. But no matter how small your legs are, halfway from the top to the bottom is still going to be where the knees go. So there's always things like that that can help you with proportions. Okay, so I did this one. Should have done this one. But anyway, we can do it in any order. It's not important. The other thing is that with the adult male, you get this kind of, let me change colors. You get this kind of a V shape going on. And as you get younger, or not, when you're drawing younger people, this V is less pronounced. So here you can see it's kind of just straight up and down, and it really only takes on that V shape for males, and after puberty it starts to form. So this gets a bit more at an angle rather than just straight up and down. Okay, so the other thing is that I think we covered it, that the hands generally end mid-thigh, but when you get younger, that distance shrinks. So for the baby, it's not mid-thigh, it's much higher than mid-thigh. But you could plot this, and then it's still as you get older, it gets closer and closer to mid-thigh until it's mid-thigh, and it is, even when you're like 5 years old, your hands are pretty much mid-thigh. So okay, so now for this guy, just putting in this box shape, giving him a bit of a neck, and you can just sort of put in the boxes anyway, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but when you get these boxes in, it gives you a relationship between the head and the torso. So then I can get this in, and this represents a torso, and we're including the hips, so the pelvis is actually inside this big box shape. It's not like the pelvis is somewhere here. You could break it down differently, where you have like the ribs and then the pelvis. You could break it down like that, but I'm not. I'm breaking it down so they're together, and that's just for simplicity's sake. So then you get in the head shape, you get in the torso shape, get in the legs, so you just have to put lines going straight down, go halfway, and you'll find the knees. Halfway, find the knees. And then put in the hands, so it's around mid-thigh. Get the arms in. And this is pretty much it. Like, that's the main proportion. And again, what's really important is to see this relationship between the head and the torso. And if you can memorize these shapes instead of necessarily how many heads tall, the figure is, then you have to do a lot less calculation, And if you can simplify it, it's really not that complicated. You can start to just get a sense of like the proportions and how big the head is. So, for instance, for a child, you can just start to think of it as, okay, they have a really big head and a really small body, or not a very narrow body comparatively, and their head is just about as wide as their shoulders is the width, and then their legs are really small. So if you just have that in your head, got a big head and got this small body, it's just about as wide as it is as the head, and got these little legs, and get the hands in, then it's like, okay, hey, I've got a child proportion, and I didn't have to measure, right? I'm just going with that feeling of, okay, it's about this. Where this chart comes in handy, though, is if you're going for a specific age and you kind of want to know, how is a 9-year-old going to look? It's like it's somewhere around 7 or 6 heads tall. And this is for more realistic proportions. In anime, you can have a 7-headed adult, and it might be fine. Sometimes they have like 11 heads tall adults or crazy things. And 7.5 is often considered an average for realistic proportions, whereas 8 heads is very idealized. So in the next lesson, I'm going to flesh it out and cover, actually drawing in the heads.